I think we've got everybody. So if everyone is ready to get going, we'll call the House Study Committee meeting on quarters and semesters to order. And I think we have somebody who's going to get us started with the pledge this morning. Is that so? Would you introduce yourself, young lady?
Yes, sir. I'm Rihanna. I'm from the 4th grade prep school, and I'm going to be leading y'all into the pledge today.
Well, it is an honor to have you with us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll begin when you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you, Rihanna. Chairman Martin, would you mind opening us up in a word of prayer? Mr. Chairman?
Okay, I'm just checking to see if I needed to press a button. Thank you, if you'll join me. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us here today. Thank you for everyone arriving safely, and we ask your indulgence that we, after this meeting, return home safely. Also today, as we pause, let us be wary and thankful that we live in the country that we do, that we come here safe today from harm, and let us keep in mind all those around the world where the stress and the strife is causing problems for them in their daily lives. Ask you to look over each and every one of them in every country, in every corner, our servicemen and women who are out there every day to keep us safe, our first responders. And Lord, we ask you that we look deep in our souls and our hearts every day, hug those close to us and be thankful, knowing that you will guide us. You are always there for us in the good times and most importantly in our bad times. Again, we thank you for all these that come to bring us information. We ask you that we take it in thoughtfully and make good decisions for the people of the state of Georgia. And Lord, we thank you for the things that you have done to help those that have been in such a pain's way since the storms, and the families that are affected down in Sapelo Island over that tragedy this weekend. We ask you to be with them and those first responders. Just in everything that we have to confront us, we look to you, and in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we start on that side? We don't have enough, we've got a small committee here, very great number of members, or our members are, certainly high esteemed folks, but we have a smaller committee, so we have a chance to introduce ourselves, I think, at every meeting, if that's okay. Would you start with us?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to GMC for hosting us. My name is Ashwani Monga. I'm currently the interim president at the University of West Georgia, but the reason I'm on this committee is because of my regular role, which is as the executive vice chancellor and chief academic officer of the University System of Georgia. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start with, I am not Dr. Ray Perrin from the Technical College System of Georgia. He's much smarter and better looking than I am, but I am Mark Peavy. I'm the Chief of Staff for the system. Dr. Perrin regrets not being here today, but we have a President's Council meeting as part of the Leadership Conference in Savannah, and he needed to be there this morning, and so you guys unfortunately got stuck with me. I'll try not to mess anything up. So.
Thank you, Chairman Blackman and members of the committee and our guests. My name is Chuck Martin. I represent the 49th District in North Fulton County. Made up the cities of Milton, Alpharetta, and Roswell. I'm here today as a member of this committee. I believe probably in my role as the higher education chairman, and do appreciate you, Chairman Blackman, for putting this together. Look forward to the information we'll get.
Thank you, Chairman. Shaw Blackman, I represent the 146th District, which is down in Houston County.
Good morning. I'm Representative Jenny Earhart. I represent the northwestern corner of Cobb County, including parts of Ackworth, Kennesaw, Powder Springs, and Marietta. And I think we brought the fall weather to Milledgeville today. So thank you so much for the opportunity and for being such beautiful hosts.
Good morning, Stacey Evans. I represent House District 57, which is all City of Atlanta, the Midtown area, and the neighborhoods a little bit north of that area. And I'm surprised that I'm the first one that said this morning, but I'm also a proud Devil Dog. Go Dogs. What a game this weekend. And thank you all for being here and hosting us today.
Good morning. I'm Mike Chokus. I'm a little bit south of here from Americus, Georgia. District 151. It stretches from Fort Moore to the Marine base down in Albany, and from the Flint River to the Chattahoochee River. I've got 8 counties.
Very good. So you can see we have a very distinguished list of members here, and we're equally as excited to be on your campus, General. General Caldwell, who has been the president, I guess, since November of 2013. I see that right? And you are the 21st president. And we happen to be in the former legislative building here in Milledgeville, which used to be where our representatives and other senators would convene. Is that correct? Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you, and I'm going to turn the floor over to you, sir, and bring welcomes on behalf of your institution.
All right, and first of all, let me just say on behalf of the entire GMC family, thank you all for coming, and we're thrilled to be able to host you this morning while you're here on our campus. I'm going to introduce, if I don't mind, real quickly, our team that I think is pretty important to know. Starting on over there on your far right is Jody Yearwood. He's our senior vice president, and he runs our leadership college. That's the 4-year online program to get a BAS degree that we have here in the state of Georgia. Next here is Colonel Amy Lee. Colonel Amy Lee is our principal, and she runs our K through 12 program. She's our senior vice president and runs that program. Next is Colonel Nelson Kraft. Colonel Nelson Kraft is our senior vice president, and he runs the entire junior college operation that we have. So those are the 3 key components of the institution. And then Dr. Susan Isaac, or Susan Daniel, she just got married, Isaac Daniel, she will be sharing some things with you here this morning as our chief academic officer and senior vice president. She and I have been working together since I arrived here, so know her real well. If I could, I'm just going to quickly set the stage, sir, if you don't mind, just so you know who Georgia Military College is. And I'll do that by just sharing a couple of slides. We often go right back to our mission statement, and we think that's very important because it's the same mission statement from kindergarten all through the 4th year of college. There is no difference. And we're not a military school. We are a leadership institute. And as we say in our mission statement, again, this has been around for 145 years as of this past week was our birthday. But we build on a military heritage. So we very much embrace and take on. Of the 12,500 students of all varying kinds you're going to see that are associated with this institution each year, only about 250 of them actually are wearing a uniform to serve in the military. Others wear uniforms, but only about 250 are really actually going to military service. So we build on that heritage, but our core values are the same for everybody. If you'd listened to our high school cheer team this weekend, you would have heard in their cheers, duty, honor, country. It's that kind of ethos that we instill in and expect from every student, whether you're a 4th year online student like my son at Georgia Military College working full-time. He can literally talk to you about our core values here because it permeates through everything we do. Hope and opportunity, I'll share, we are incredibly proud of the fact that we are an institution that provides hope and opportunity to Georgia residents. If you are interested in getting an education, whether K through 12 or first 2 years of college or 4-year BAS degree, you can do that with us. And again, we really very much talk about being servant leaders. And you'll see that starting in kindergarten all the way through the 2nd year of in-seat junior college, we have all kinds of programs to where they get involved in their communities, and we really stress the importance of being a servant leader, serving others before you're served yourself. And then civility and respect. Again, goes without saying, you see some real challenges today in America, We have been very blessed that that has been a part of who we are. We encourage and solicit different opinions and ideas and thoughts and do it in a manner that's civil and respectful to each other. But that's our mission statement. So it guides and directs everything from our funding to our priorities to our how we hire people and everything else. So just to share that. The next one is we have 4 big ideas that we follow here. And then the number one priority in the institution, and we collectively came up with these 11 years ago when I first joined the team, is we are all about student success. If you are going to do something, think of how we can best help our students. If it's not going to help our students, then it's probably not something we need to do. We don't do a lot of extra stuff. If it's not directly related to the success, helping our students be successful in their academic endeavors, then we actually really don't do it. And then this third one here, and I share that because it impacts a little bit on this quarter system. We'll talk about it today, but we have to think and act as one institution. We are literally amalgamated into one team. Those 3 individuals we talked about talk every day, all the time. We don't have extra anything. The facilities that we use for playing fields are the same ones that the kindergarten we use, the junior college we use, the high school we use. It's all one institution. And so as we tell everybody, we have to think and, more importantly, even act as one institution. So something you're going to do, if it has an impact or a bearing on somebody else, so if the junior college is going to do something and it could impact our high school students, our 9th through 12th grade students, then they have to synchronize that up and coordinate it. And if there's requires further dialogue and discussion, we come together as a senior team and do it. So those are our 4 big ideas that drive everything about who we are. And then this last slide I just want to share with you, it kind of puts it into visual perception. So our K through 12 program over here, about 900 students. Again, Colonel Amy Lee is the principal, has been here 21 years. Came right out of Georgia College State University, where we have a wonderful student-teacher program that feeds a lot of our faculty that we do have today. But this K through 12 program here, high-performing, high-achieving program, 15 years, 100% graduation rate. I can go on and on. But it's just an incredible blows, any time of AP scores, we're not only exceeding state, but we're exceeding national averages in every single one. And every kid takes AP test. Anyway, so that's a great program. Our junior college here in Milledgeville, which has the Bulldog, because as many of you know, we were initially formed in 1879 to be the feeder school to the University of Georgia. So therefore, everything we do looks like the University of Georgia because of that heritage. But that's our athletic program. 98% of those men and women, 257 of them or so, all from Georgia. We do not recruit out of the state of Georgia. We only recruit here. And we very much pride ourselves at about 90, if you take out our college corps cadets, 98% of our students are basically almost Georgia residents. This is our college corps of cadets. That's the men and women that are making a commitment to serve in some capacity in the service to their nation in a uniform. And then the NC junior college students. The 8 satellite locations, 4 of them co-located with military installations here in the state of Georgia. Very important because that's why we developed the Leadership College, to give them the ability, when they do leave the state of Georgia, they can stay and maintain a part of finishing their 4-year BAS degree. And then, of course, the programs we have to allow them to continue on with other schools in Georgia to get their master's. That's the number of students that took courses with us last year. But this part is really important right here. When we talk about hope and opportunity in our mission statement, this one right here, 80% of our junior college students were first generation and or low income students. So we're providing an opportunity to men and women in the state of Georgia that might not otherwise venture forward and try to get a college degree, or attempted it and were not successful some other manner or way, and now they're with us. And so we very much, we'll talk about it just a little bit, but we're about a culture of care. If you're a faculty member with us and you do not have a belief and a value system that says, I am going to help that young man or woman who's walked through that door to give them every opportunity to get a college degree. They've got to be committed, they've got to be dedicated themselves, but we are about helping first generation and low income families in the state of Georgia obtain a junior college degree so that they then are set and ready to move on to a USG school system and be successful. Anyway, so that's the opening. I'm going to take from there and turn it over to Dr. Daniel, who will actually, she's our Chief Academic Officer, and she'll talk a little about what you all are here for today.
Thank you, sir. That's probably it. And I should probably tell you that first, welcome to Georgia Military College, but second, this place is very special. I have been here for 24 years. Came in 2000 as a faculty member and literally rose through the ranks. So there's probably not much I don't know about GMC. So, but it is a very special place. And so I'm going to walk you through that. So first off, Georgia Military College is accredited by SAC-COC. Worked very closely with them. Actually just came back from an on-site committee visit working with a SAC-COC team. So our enrollment for the institution hovers usually around 11,500. Last year, our unduplicated head count was 11,497 students. In a quarter term, though, like in our quarter one enrollment term, we have typically about 6,500 students per term. Last quarter one, I think we were at 6,765 students. That give you kind of an idea of what a quarter looks like. And our full-time equivalency is around 6,000, so it was 6,188 last year, if you're familiar with that IPEDS measure as well. We are primarily commuter students, but we do have 246 last year junior college cadets, and those cadets, of course, are here in Milledgeville at the main campus. As far as our student population, we are actually primarily female. So we have 63% of our students are female. We are a minority serving institution, so 59% of our students are minority students, and of that 59%, 45% are African American students. And as President Caldwell just mentioned, yes, 80% of our students are low-income, first-generation students, and 94% of our students are Georgia residents. So obviously we contribute to student success. That's our #1 mission. So we have our success measures that we track every year and discuss, as most institutions do. We have what we call our success rate, because we're primarily concerned with obviously graduating students, but also transferring students. As primarily an associate degree granting institution, our mission is to get them to that 2-year degree and then get them into a 4-year institution. So we have 57% was our last cohort for our combined transfer graduation rate. And in that combination, the graduation rate was 33% and the transfer is 24%, to kind of give you an idea of the makeup of how those two things come together. Last year we had 1,303 graduates. And as we've been tracking them, our GMC graduates who do choose to go on and attend a 4-year college or university, 62% of them do go to USG. So that's our thing. We want to send them there, right? So I know you're here to talk about quarters, so I thought I'd share a little bit about our system with you. We are, as you know, on the quarter system. So we have standard quarters, but we do have 4 standard quarters, and then we have a summer term. So essentially, this is how it works. Quarter 1 runs from August to mid-October, and then quarter 2 runs from mid-October into December. And then quarter 3 runs January to mid-March, and quarter 4 runs from mid-March into May. And then summer, of course, is June and July. Our summer term is the same length as our regular quarters, so they're all broken up into 5. So we do have 5 entry points for students coming in. We have 5 graduation points as well for students who are finishing and moving out. Our calendar does align with the high schools for our dual enrollment program. And we do have 12 quarter hours, just in case you don't know that. It's considered a full load. And sort of in layman's terms, that's about 3 classes a term that a student would take. And we do offer a variety of educational formats. So we do have traditional in-seat classes. We have hybrid classes, which is sort of a mixture of in-seat classes and online classes. And then we do have fully online courses as well. So the quarters and semesters, obviously you already probably know that they're the 2 major systems nationwide for units of measurement for college course credits. And talk a little bit maybe about the credit hour conversion if you haven't done that already. So taking a standard class for us would be about 5 quarter hours. So once our students take that course and they transfer into a semester, a college with semester system, then that's a 1.5 conversion. So it transfers over as a 3.33 semester hours. Traditionally, I think semester hours, the traditional course is about 3 semester hours. So a little bit more, just a little bit more. So that the quarter system actually has extra contact time per student. You know, when you actually factor the time, yes, it is a shortened time span as the students are going through in approximately 9 weeks, but they do get, and I know, a whopping 250 minutes more in the quarter system. So, you know, I always say potato, the time is essentially about the same. You're just spreading one across 16 weeks versus over the 9 weeks. And then the number of classes they take, obviously, is a little bit different.
Can you explain, Dr. Daniel, just to us that, you know, have forgotten quarters, I guess, over the years, can you explain how that happens, those extra minutes? Is it
the 250 minutes?
Yeah.
So any institution, when they're building their calendar, most of us use the Carnegie unit of measure. So we do like 50 minutes is equivalent to an hour, and then of course we factor in our study time outside. So essentially, when you're building, so like on the quarter system, you have to have 2,500 minutes. And so that gets chopped up according to your schedule, whether it's like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or it could be a weekend class, or a Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday through Friday. However that's broken up, essentially by the end of the term, they have to have 2,500 minutes of physical contact time with a teacher, or if it's in the online environment, the equivalency of that, which is a little bit trickier, a little bit different, but essentially it's the same thing. And hybrid the same way. You have to kind of marry those two together to show that you're getting that contact time with the student. So semesters is 2,250 minutes that they absolutely have to have in that system for the credit hour unit measurement. But it's essentially it's like a yardstick for that. Yeah, if that helps.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. So there are, I would say first, there are pluses and minuses to all systems, right? But for us, here are the benefits that we found for the quarter system. One is the ability to accelerate the degree completion if a student chooses to do so. They could potentially graduate in a shorter amount of time, mainly because we have 4 terms in a summer term, so that's five times that they can take classes. So they can essentially finish earlier if they're going full-time and that sort of thing. Like I said, there's a little bit more contact time per course, but not enough. And in case you're worried, when the semester is transferred to us, it's less than, their 3 hours comes in less than our 5, but we have measurements in place where the students don't lose anything. So they have to meet the minimum 90 quarter hours for an associate degree, but most of the degrees are a couple hours over, so we waive those hours. We do a course-by-course equivalency for USG so that the students don't lose out on that, right? We want to make sure they're okay. But we do find that the quarter system does help develop academic and professional skills. So like time management, faster paced, you have to learn that very quickly, in order to survive the quarter system. But you do get these little breaks in between the terms, which are nice, so it reduces burnout. So they get regular opportunities for rest, rejuvenation, and then they're starting all over again. But I do find that they're learning information in a shorter amount of time. So there are pluses and minuses to that as far as their academic strengths and weaknesses. That can depend on the student, but ultimately they have to learn in a shorter amount of time. So it is a skill that they actually do acquire. And then they do quickly adapt to a new environment. So they come in, they've got to know who the course is, the professor, get that syllabus, get going and move. They don't have time to waste and to adapt. So I find that our graduates, when they finish or when we're preparing them to transfer, are very familiar with things like the syllabi, the professor, what does the professor want? Because they don't have time to monkey around with that before they have to finish. So that's, I would say, the benefits for us that I found. Pathways of opportunity, creating pathways of opportunities for success. We focus a lot on this, and so with our students ultimately transferring to other institutions, we work a lot on what are called articulation agreements. And so right now we have 47 articulation agreements with four-year institutions. Right now 23 of them are with the University System of Georgia, different colleges, different universities, and 14 of them are with GICA institutions, that's your Georgia Independent Colleges. Of the 47, though, 39 of them are guaranteed admission. So what that means is that we've partnered together to make sure that when the student graduates, like with their associate degree, and they have usually a particular GPA, each institution is a little bit different as far as what GPA they want. But once they have that degree, they have that GPA, then we turn around, they transfer to the USG institution or a GICA institution, and they walk through the door and don't lose credit. So the whole point of the articulation agreements is a seamless transition without losing credit. So we work very hard to do those agreements for our students. We do have 21 agreements with the Technical College System of Georgia. Yeah, and that's a little bit different for us because that's the Bachelor's of Applied Science degree. So as in the Technical College System, as the students finish their Associate of Applied Science, we want to ensure that when they come to us to do the Bachelor's of Applied Science, that they do not lose credit, that they're seamlessly coming in and no courses are lost. So I always say if you can, one of my main focuses is make sure that students do not lose time and they do not lose money, because we have a lot of working moms and military folks and they don't have time or money to waste. We got to get them in, get them out, get them into the workforce, right? So we do a great partnership with you guys on those too. And then we do have agreements with, these aren't really articulation agreements because you're not really transferring credits, students back and forth. But we do have partnerships with some Georgia high schools as well for dual enrollment. So we do focus on that, get them in, get their few classes, and then I would say most of your dual enrollment are probably headed to USG, to a USG institution. And then, last year of all the students attending, 2,669 actually transferred to USG institutions, 28 different locations in your system. And now I'm going to actually turn it over to our principal, Miss Amy Lee, to talk a little bit about how dual enrollment works with the college. Thank you.
Thanks. You don't mind if we call you back up for questions later? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Daniel.
Good morning, and again, welcome. Thank you for being here. And although we are talking about semester and quarter hours, and I'm at the K through 12 program, for us, it's just innately known that we're going to talk about the entire institution. As General Caldwell said, we can't really talk about one pathway without talking about all of them. And so we really wanted to stress to you the importance of the integration between the prep school dual enrollment students and the junior college students. The partnership that we have provides such an amazing opportunity for our prep school students. And so we seamlessly work together. It's very easy to see that we're sharing our facilities. You can see that. But what you don't see is what's happening behind the scenes between my team and the team for the junior college, both online and in seat. And what you don't see is that we're working together to ensure that our students can seamlessly go to the junior college, do their dual enrollment, and then also partake in our prep school classes. What that means is that 70% of our juniors and seniors on average take dual enrollment through the junior college. And you'll see our students leaving our academic building, Ussery Hall, which is our high school academic building, walking to the 2 academic buildings that we have for the junior college, taking their classes, and then going back. What that translates to is that last year, our senior class took over 2,000 credit hours before they graduated. So they're able to take these classes very easily. Our counselor and the coaches for the junior college work together to make sure that we are getting the right classes that dual enrollment students need, which also translates to the other high schools having those college class options as well. And so that integration of prep school, dual enrollment, junior college working together has really been a successful program for our juniors and seniors. Pending your questions, that concludes our presentation, and that's questions for either myself, and I'm surprised that they gave me the mic today, because when I have an opportunity to talk about the prep school, and I only got to do it for like 30 seconds, so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but also Dr. Daniel or President Caldwell.
Thank you, Colonel Lee. Appreciate that. Questions? Yes, sir.
Dr. Daniels. Good morning. So thank you again. Really great to see the presentation and the data. It seems like about 2 out of 3 come to the USG. So really pleased to see that.
Absolutely.
I did want to ask you because you mentioned when your students transfer, the quarters do seamlessly convert to semesters. I wanted to ask you what happens in the reverse. Do you have some students who come in from TCSG or elsewhere and transfer to your place? And if so, how does the transfer process work? Is it as smooth on the other side as well?
Yes. So when anyone from the semester system comes into our quarter system, transfers hours into our quarter system, what we do is normally they would lose credits, right? Or they lose a little bit of credit. But what we do is we do a 1-for-1 course conversion. So for instance, if it's like a Composition 1 course that they took like at a USG institution, and for some reason they're coming to us, probably for remediation, send them right back to y'all. But let's say that happens, we would do a 1-to-1 conversion. So if they stayed here and they graduated, they'd still have to meet the SACs, obviously 90 quarter hours for the degree completion. But as far as the courses, we count them. Most of our degrees are not 90, they're like 92 or 91, so we waive those hours as the students come in to make sure that they don't lose out on that. It's that, so, save time and money.
Great,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have any other questions from the committee members? Yes, Representative Earhart.
Thank you. I'm kind of in wonderful presentation, first of all. It seems to me that seamless transition is sort of a theme here, and quite frankly, one that starts early on. And I can't, I'd be wrong to deny the fact that that is just such a wonderful way of approaching both academic and even later in career, the ability to transition through these various stages, whether it be from the prep school, as Colonel Lee was talking about, into the junior college, and then from the junior college then on into either higher education or some other postgraduate endeavor. What would you say is the key? Because being able to facilitate smooth transitions like this is not typically a task for the faint-hearted. I've seen situations where people struggle greatly with transition. I've seen it in business. I've seen it in the academic world. Is there something sort of unique about Georgia College? About Georgia Military College? You think that sort of has eased and helped this to be such a successful outcome while incorporating so many types of transitions?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because that is our student, is the student in transition. So a lot of the times they're not just in transition academically, but in their lives too. So they have to balance a whole lot. I still teach every now and then. I'm actually teaching this term. And just to talk to them, especially going through the hurricane, Helene, and hitting Augusta, Valdosta areas for us really, really hard. But all the stuff that they have to juggle. So yes, we want to make their transition as easy as possible. So we have what are called enrollment and graduation coaches. And so as our students are coming into our system, the enrollment coaches work very hard with them, whether they're dual enrollment and coming in, or whether they're majority of them transferring something from somewhere coming in, or military credits. That can be tricky for students when they're coming in. So we have designated people who help them kind of transition and enter into the institution. And then once they're settled and they're with us, then we immediately learn what their plans are, because their plans are either going to be to get so many hours and transfer, or to graduate and transfer. I will say we do try to encourage graduation and then transfer, because they tend to retain more and finish their bachelor's degrees if they get their associate degree. That's just research out there. But so then they transition to what's called a graduation coach. And the graduation coach at that point works one-on-one with the student to ensure that their goals are met. And so they will ask not just the graduation coaches, but even the faculty about next steps. It's not uncommon, even when I'm teaching, for students to go, I know this isn't really related to the class, but how do you get a master's degree, or how do you get a doctoral degree, or what is that? And so we have a lot of those conversations too. So the faculty here are very much not just academic coaches, but coaches for transition as well. So we answer those questions on a daily basis, really, for our students. But our graduation coaches are trained to do that, to help them identify immediately, as soon as we can, where they want to go and how to get them there and what to expect when they get them there. And then I will say that with our articulation agreements, the USG institutions especially have been really great about that. There's a couple partnerships, maybe I can call out Augusta University right now, who has actually, not only do we have an articulation agreement with them, but they have actually partnered with us on the advising of this student. So they have spent time at the campuses, Milledgeville and our little Augusta campus, to talk to our staff, talk to our students about, because there are elective baskets, and we want to make sure they take what they need for the major they're going into, so that they don't lose credit, and then that will seamlessly transition. So they've been fantastic about coming and doing that with us, and then we move over. But I'm finding that to be more and more the case, especially now, I think, in the environment of low enrollments across the board, I think, in education, as our high school population decreases as well. So, yeah.
I just had a quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman, if I may real quick. Kind of reading here some of the benefits that you've listed. I'm very interested in the first one, ability to accelerate degree completion. So essentially as I understand, 5 opportunities, not just 4, throughout the year to maybe change course. Or I'm struck, it reminds me, I honestly had not thought of it until reading this, that it reminds me of something that I did under the quarter system in high school. I had the opportunity, because of the quarter system, I was close enough to graduation, I thought I can do this a little earlier. I ramped up my classes winter quarter so that I could work and save up some money spring quarter. So I accelerated my degree completion in that regard. Do you see a lot of students taking advantage of that? Essentially, you could switch gears either way. Let's say you want to ramp up and get done sooner, or let's say you're taking some particularly difficult courses and maybe you want a lighter load one semester. Exactly. So that opportunity to switch gears is going to come up more quickly under this system.
I would say yes. I mean, in the quarter system, I do think you can switch gears like that, and students can ramp up. I would say your typical student probably doesn't do that, only because they're working. They're single moms. They're taking 1 or 2 classes most of the times at a time. So they don't, but you can have a student come in and go, I want to, especially military, I want to get in, get it, move on. And they can do that. I mean, they could get their 4-year degree, even with the BAS online, in 3 years if they do that. Right. But then, again, going back to the semester system, you could essentially do that there too. You just want to ramp it up. Right. They'd have to ramp it up and take more than they normally take. But I would say whichever system you're looking at, to me, the more important thing is balancing the academic load, what we call academic load. So every student comes in with academic strengths and weaknesses. And so whether they're graduation coaches or advisors or, faculty advisors or whatever advisors you have, typically that's one of the first conversations you have with a student. Like if you're very good at math and science, but you're not so good at writing, then, you don't give them history and English and all that in the same term. You give them what they're comfortable with, what's a little easier for them, and you couple it in with the harder classes. And then they can balance their load. And in some cases, if you've got a student who excels at all of that, like we had a student one time, this was ages ago, like maybe 10 years or more ago, but we had a student over here that was a cadet who actually took classes with us, full load, took classes at Georgia College and finished very quickly. And he was a super smart guy, and I think eventually went into pharmacy. So they're out there and they can do it. But I think I'm not really sure the system is as important as the advising that goes into it and the drive of the student.
Thank you.
If that makes sense. Thank you.
Representative Evans?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. Thanks again for having us. I have a couple of questions. First, I know you're non-affiliated, sort of like Notre Dame on your own, right? Is that?
We're considered a public authority, yes. Public independent.
So I know that status, but when you had TCSG and USG and GICA all switching to semesters, I would assume there must have been some pressure, and I was wondering to also switch, and I was wondering if that's true, how y'all resisted it, and as honest as you can be on the roadblocks to being different.
Right. I don't remember ever having pressure to switch one system to the other. And sir, you might know this more than I do. I'm sure there was conversation that came up at the time about switching, because it always does. And I will say this, for every state, for every institution, like if you look at UGA, even across my lifetime, I've seen them go quarter semester, quarter semester, quarter. So the back and forth flip is not uncommon in a situation, in a system with any college. With any college, you have those discussions. We always think about our students, the kind of students we have, what system would best serve those students. So I think for us, there was never really a desire to switch to semesters. Because of the military personnel that we serve and the working families, the low income, they need that, 3 courses, concentrated focus, and then move on to the next. So for us, the system works for who we are as a mission, and I'm sure every institution takes that into account as they, make that decision.
And then I noticed in the materials that 62% of the students that go on to get a 4-year degree go to USG institutions, but I was wondering what percentage of your students do go on to get a 4-year degree? Like what percentage of the population overall are we talking about there? Oh gosh, I don't even have that percentage in front of me. I hate to misquote it, but I hate to just say that off the top of my head even, and then mess it up. My IR folks would probably get me. Yeah.
They would come back and say it. But I can supply.
Yeah, that would be great.
I can supply you with that.
That would
be
great. Yeah. I think I saw that the raw number was about 2,200 or something like that.
Yeah.
What's the current student population roundabout right now?
We're about 11,500 unduplicated head count, right?
Okay, and that would include all parts. Prep school, high school.
No. That's just
the junior college.
That's just a junior college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just a junior college. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this may be a question more for others on the panel, unless you know. Do we have other higher ed institutions that are not affiliated with either USG, TCSG, or GICA? Anybody know besides this institution?
I'm guessing not public, but
think so.
yeah.
I don't think so.
I was just curious. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Molly, we can get that, right? We
Sorry.
can probably look that question up and get it to you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add one thing. We ask ourselves every year, we go through strategic planning twice a year, whether we should go to a semester system. And we consciously, I've been here 11 years now with the team, and we've every time said our students absolutely need a quarter system. And one of the key aspects of what we also ask ourselves is, we have to stay aligned with USG. It makes no sense for us to provide educational opportunities if our students aren't prepared and ready to go compete in and be successful in a USG school. So we monitor everything they do, we track everything they change, and if we need to, we then come back and make the adjustments in what we're doing, because it goes back to contribute to student success. And although we came up with the way to give a student be able to just go to one person and do everything instead of having to go to 5 different offices, that was a key change we made about 8 years ago. The next part is we always ask ourselves, is there any changes we need to make? And so we kind of do what we call an after-action review each graduation to ask ourselves, did any of these students have a difficult time getting into the USG school or in transferring any of their credits? And literally in 11 years I've been here, because we keep adjusting. So we follow them, we do what they do. We do not try to be independent in thought and action from them, because we recognize all we're really doing is helping prepare those who perhaps are a little more challenged, have a little more difficult time moving into that larger environment, getting them ready to go be successful at a four-year institution.
Chairman Chokes, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Daniel, what I wanted to ask you was, are there any challenges from the SACS accreditation for semesters and quarters, that maybe some hoops that extra hoops y'all need to jump through to maintain that accreditation?
Absolutely not. Yeah, because so SACS, is the whole Southeast. So they have almost every system is going to be quarter or semester, one or the two. So there are certain regulations in SACS that deal with like how many credit hours a degree program should be, those sorts of things. But as far as the actual, and you have to explain in your narrative, I'm quarter and this is what this means, or I'm semester and this is what this means. But no, it's mostly just talking about your institution in a way that if someone who was reviewing with you was from another credit hour system, that they would be okay. Yeah. They even make room for what's called competency-based education, CBE credit, which is completely different. I think Western Governors is the one that comes to mind that does that. So there's all sorts of credit hour systems. These are just the two most common. But no, the answer is no. SACS is good with both.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. If nobody else has any, I don't want to jump in front of anyone. Do you have something, Chairman Martin? No, please.
Just looking at the slide, student head count 11,497, college graduates 1,303. I'm assuming that's last year for graduates and current.
Just the graduates. Yeah.
So the student head count includes dual enrollment?
Yes. Yes, sir.
How many of those are dual enrollment versus?
Dual enrollment. Let me see if I
I
did bring some additional data in case you wanted some. I didn't have yours.
Well, while you're doing that, what I was trying to get to is Representative Evans' question, because I see the other circle over here, and by the way, love the circles in red and black. I'm going to go with Representative Go Dog. But the transfer graduation rate is 57%. So that is that the percentage of your like in-house students, if you will, or what you would consider full-time students that go on to either transfer to continue their education or graduate, and then you may not track them so much if they go directly on, but that wouldn't include the folks that come for a dual enrollment.
So the 57% is what's called an IPEDS metric. So that's like the federal system for how data is measured. And they only measure it with first-time, full-time degree-seeking students. Right. So dual enrollment is not included in that metric, right? Because they're sort of outside of that. And transfer students, unfortunately, aren't either. And so that's the sad thing about that, because I would love to put them in there. Oh, and I do have your other number for dual enrollment. We had about 3,500 last year across the whole year, unduplicated head count. So of the 11,500, about 3,500 are actually dual enrollment.
So that leaves you with 8,000 students in that you don't have that on campus here.
No. So that's, so some of them are fully online.
Okay.
And some of them, and then of course you got the main campus population, and then we've got some at the 8 satellites.
Sure.
Sprinkled.
Okay.
We're sprinkled everywhere.
Fair enough.
Sprinkled a little bit.
Okay.
Gives you a small environment everywhere you go.
So when you're the 57% transfer number, you don't get credit for students that finish up here that actually transferred some credits in. They don't get to go into that 57%.
Right. So if they're first time and full time, and they graduate, we get credit. If they're first time full time and they transfer, we get credit. So that's one of the reasons why transferring to USG is really important for us, because we get credit for. Well, we count that as our success rate, but we track our transfer rate because of that too. Because most of your associate degree students are going to want to transfer, but you know, they come in sometimes a little intimidated by a big 4-year school, and they want to get their feet wet before they move on. Yeah, we do a lot of self-esteem building.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
Anything else? So, a couple of questions. I'll try to be quick, but a lot of what you said was intriguing to me. You have a high population of minority students. What do you attribute that to? Just prioritizing?
No. So we're open enrollment institutions, so essentially if a student has high school diploma or GED, they can come straight into us. But I would say some of your demographics that revolve around race and ethnicity can occur based on location of your campus,
Where
for
your
instance.
Campuses are.
So like our Fairburn campus probably has a much higher African American population than say our Columbus campus does. I'm just off the top of my head. So some of that can be location based, but I also think some of it's probably due to the demographic of the type of students that we get as well. We have a lot of, I would say our number one student is African American female, and this is more anecdotal than, don't hold me to a number, but just from teaching, I get a lot of single moms in my population, and I think they attract each other. Once they hear there's a school that's willing to work with you, that listens to your problem, that kind of thing, they come to you, and they know they can work with you, and get through the situation. So I'm not kidding, we do as much self-esteem, self-motivation, the faculty, we do that culture of care with our students. And, so for example, even with Hurricane Helene, that hit us at the end of our quarter. we had literally 7 days before the quarter ended, and I had 2 campuses with no electricity, no power. I also had communities that were devastated. I was actually in North Augusta when it hit. And I ended up bringing my family to Milledgeville because I have a rental house here. Since I just got married, I still had that. But, if you hadn't been in the area to see the devastation, it was pretty amazing. I mean, I called it the zombie apocalypse. We were driving through, no traffic lights, the power lines in the road. Well, our students were in that. So we had students without power, internet, or anything. So even while we were all like, yes, we got power, they were like, oh no, we don't have internet. So I was teaching that term, and I was like, what are we gonna do about our students? So we extended deadlines that we did sort of a mass, if you need an incomplete, we're gonna do incompletes. I mean, we did that, and we communicated that out to the students. But we did the first and foremost, relax, everybody take a deep breath, we're all going through this together, it's okay. We'll do incompletes, we'll do what we need to do. And so we did. I even extended the incomplete deadline from midterm to December 13th, because in some cases I had students that their whole house was gone, I mean, they're not going to be doing this in the weekend when the internet comes up, so it's going to take them a minute. So we did that for them. To me, that's the kind of institution we are. We have that culture of care where the student comes first. The learning is important, and they have to be paired together, but nobody learns anything when they're stressed and freaking out and have, deadlines that they think are so ingrained in stone they can't get past. So we just, go, take a deep breath. We're here for you. We're going to get there. you'll get your assignments done, the learning will be there, and we'll all be fine. So, yeah, so they do. I think the word gets out, and they all come to us for that, for that reason.
No, we have GMC campus in Warner Robins. We love it. We're so glad y'all are there.
Thank you, sir.
And then, just touch on the low-income first generation. Y'all are a bargain too, right? I mean, you're kind of a bargain out there.
And I probably can't talk the business end as much as some of the others. I'm sure the president would be yes. So, sir, I don't know if you want to add to that one or not, but to the monetary side.
Mr. Chairman, you're right. We work incredibly hard to making sure that we keep it as absolutely as affordable as possible.
Thank you.
I mean, everybody will tell you we work on the margins every year, just trying to get through to ensure that first and foremost our students have a tuition that's affordable.
Okay, thank you. All right, I've got two more. I'm sorry. I know
That's
we need to
okay.
move
You're
on.
fine.
I
You're fine.
apologize, but we're running out of meetings.
That's okay.
What we've heard from the last two, we've had great presentations from TCSG and USG the last couple of meetings, and it seems like there's a lot of movement and scrambling based on the fact that we're workforce, right? And so looking at mini mesters, and we heard about 8-week and 4-week. Y'all are, if I heard you correct, you're graduating students 5 times a year.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that right? So you're graduating them into the workforce 5 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the speed of graduation.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, do you have any numbers on, that turnaround, if you will, or and not asking you to provide
the
that right here,
completion
right
rate.
now,
Yeah.
but
And I will say I don't have that
That's
data
okay.
in front of me, but again, I probably would state that that's the students that finish probably under their degree time are going to be rare. I mean, because of the demographic of who we have primarily part-time students, so they're going to come to us and take a couple classes at a time to get through. So I've seen it, and I've seen students do it, and they have the ability to do it, but I wouldn't say it's common that our students do that, Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yes, so each term definitely provides us an opportunity to process graduates. And I don't know enough about the semester system to know if you could process graduates midterm if you're doing 8 weeks. You guys would probably know more than me. I don't know about the financial implications of that even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting a head shake over there, but well, thank you, Dr. Daniel, General
Thank
Caldwell. You have a great team here. We are just, thrilled to be on your campus and appreciate all that you do. Fantastic job.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Unless I missed a question for any of those members. I think we're going to transition a little bit because we're fortunate to have Cody with us today. He was going to try to join us for our first meeting and set the stage a little bit, but Cody Allen is our senior policy analyst with the Council of State Governments, and he's got a presentation that I think is going to give us a bit of an overview, and then we'll hear from Matt Cardoza, get that right, with the Department of Education towards the end of our session here today. Cody, thank you for being here. I know it's a little bit of a trip for you, so.
No, thank you. As Representative Earhart said, the fall weather was nice, had the windows down, was able to take the back roads from Sandy Springs, and it was a great drive. Thank you for having me. So as the chairman mentioned, my name is Cody Allen. I'm a senior policy analyst for the Southern Office of the Council of State Governments. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that's funded by state appropriations mostly. We serve all 3 branches of state government, primarily in the 15 states in the South. And I like to say that our definition of the South is the SEC plus Virginia and West Virginia. Everyone has a different definition, so that's the easiest way to do it. And I'll skip through most of the housekeeping. I know you all had 2 other meetings, and so you heard a lot about what the difference between the 2 calendars are and how it works. And I apologize for the scale on the map, but as you can see, the public institutions that belong to a statewide or system-wide sort of governing body are primarily on the West Coast that still use quarter systems. There's one little dot you can see in northern Louisiana, and that's Louisiana Tech, and they're a little unique, and I'll talk about them later, but in terms of system-wide, several institutions, it's California, Washington, Oregon from our research that we could see that still use the quarter system. Nationally, looking at sort of the federal data, only 5% of the public post-secondary institutions operate on a quarter system. The vast majority are on the semester-based system, again, with the exception of the West Coast states. And so, like y'all are talking about, sort of reversing the trend, switching back to a quarterly system. Honestly, there has not really been any other state legislation or commissions established to really look at this. Y'all are pretty unique and leading the way on this, so kudos to you. And I'll be excited to see the outcome of your report and your study and share it with some of the other folks around the South. So sort of highlighting the 3 states that have systems that use the quarterly calendar, and then Louisiana Tech, of course. So the University of California system has 10 institutions. 8 of the 10 operate on the quarterly system. The 2 that don't are UC Berkeley, which y'all probably know about, and then UC Merced, which is a newer institution, and so it never had to switch. It was created in 2005 and just began operations on the semester system right away. UC Berkeley switched in the 80s. Looking at some of the policy and meeting minutes back then, it appears to be primarily due to transfers in and out. They just wanted to make it easier for folks to transfer between other institutions in the state or its sort of peer institutions around the country. I should mention the California State University system, meanwhile, in state administrative code, it requires them to operate on the semester system. But in terms of sort of statutory or code requirements for the UC system or even the community college system, it delegates a lot of that to local control, so each institution's like board can sort of determine how they want to work. Switch to that. As you can see, the graduation rate was, or time to degree was a little over 4 years for UC Berkeley. And the interesting thing is I looked back to 1999, and since switching to the semester system, their time to degree has actually gone down a little bit from 4.29 years to 4.04 years. We know causation does not equal correlation, so I can't say for certain that has anything to do with switching to the semester system, maybe being more selective with their admissions, accepting more credits from dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment. But it was interesting that their time to degree did not go up. You can see system-wide, there are some really good graduation rates, both from transfer students and freshman students. Yeah, so in 1985, the graduation rate was only about 77% for freshmen, first-time students, but today it's up to 96%. Again, they attribute that to a lot of different factors, not just the calendar. Oregon. So Oregon and Washington, you'll see they're a little unique. Unlike Georgia or California or other states, they don't have one unified system for 4 years, one unified system for 2 years, or anything like that. They actually disbanded their statewide system. So each of their universities have their own sort of governing board. So like the University of Oregon has its own system that covers both the main campus in Eugene as well as any of its satellite or sort of regional campuses. So in 2013, the impetus for this change was the 3 largest institutions, which are the University of Oregon, Oregon State, and Portland State University. They requested some flexibility in their governing, and so they were able to leave the system, and then that just left 4 sort of regional institutions as part of the statewide system. And then in 2015, the rest of the universities split up too and created their own institutional systems. And they all still operate on the quarter system, but they all govern themselves a little differently. They have a lot of autonomy and flexibility. So in 2022, the Oregon Council of Presidents and their Community College Association contracted with consultants, and they had a report to kind of survey the post-secondary landscape across the country. And their conclusions of that report leaned strongly towards all of the public institutions in the state switching to a semester-based system. They brought up sort of the common things that you hear about transfer and articulation agreements, aligning calendars, but there was no formal legislation or policy put forward to change. It was just sort of review and discussion and suggestion based on just sort of student size and population. Unless the University of Oregon or Oregon State change, I don't believe the rest of the institutions will switch to a semester system, but we'll see. So Washington University, like I mentioned, or Washington, like I mentioned, they have a bunch of separate university systems as well. Same setup as Oregon, where like the University of Washington has a system for all of its campuses. Washington State has its own. And so Washington State University and its 3 satellite campuses, I believe, are the only ones that use the semester system in the state, and they switched in the 80s. There was not a public reason that I could find for why they switched. Again, it probably had to do with alignment or transfer agreements, since that seems to be sort of the common theme for the institutions or systems that do want to switch from quarters to semesters. And again, they have like Oregon, they have a very decentralized system where their institutions have a lot of local control in terms of setting their calendar and their programs, the requirements for a lot of their degrees, et cetera. As you can see, the average time to degree in years, this is using the data from each institution. Washington State is not statistically that much different than the institutions that use the quarterly system. University of Washington, of course, has higher graduation rates and a much faster time to degree. But they also have significantly higher admission standards than some of the other regional institutions. So that could be one reason why they are graduating at such an earlier rate. All right, now here's sort of the unicorn of them all. So Louisiana Tech University is part of the University of Louisiana system, but it's the only institution in the system that operates on a hybrid quarterly system, which is really more like a trimester, which I had the opportunity to talk to their provost, Dr. Donna Thomas, and she mentioned that does cause a lot of sort of administrative or bureaucratic issues because they're the one voice in the room at sort of the system-wide meetings that has to say, hey, this policy has to apply to us too, and our calendar is a little different. But they also have far and away much faster time to degree for their students. 4.2 years for full-time first-time students and 4.7 years for part-time first-year students. The average across the state is about 5 years, and for part-time it's 7 years. So they are doing really well, but they also have a smaller student body, and again, they have kind of more of a hybrid system, and they're still looking to adapt it. I believe they're going to add an 8-week mini-mester, just because their spring semester starts in March. They don't really have a January entry point, and they want to make it easier for folks to transfer in. And candidly, she mentioned athletics was also a reason. They have to get waivers from the NCAA for a lot of their sports, for transfers, things like that. So they're hoping the mini-mester will help with just transfers generally and making their calendar align a little better. All right, and so lastly, like I mentioned, there hasn't been much discussion besides your own study committee about switching, but I did find several bills that I thought were really interesting to sort of address some of the topics that you all brought up in the House resolution that created this committee, particularly time to degree, allowing folks to enter the workforce quicker, things like that to sort of make a more efficient system with easier pathways. So Indiana, they've done a lot of great work. In 2013, they did a sort of 15 to complete bill, which is similar to what y'all's initiative is, sort of requiring to get full financial aid, you have to have take 15 credit hours in your first 12 months, at least one semester. They also worked a lot on aligning their high school curriculum so that the college core classes that students take in high school align well so they can jump into college and already have credits. They also, by July 1st of 2025, they have to create one bachelor's degree program that only requires 3 years worth of credits to complete. And then based on the success of that, every year they have to go back and evaluate what other sort of degrees can fall into that 3-year requirement. Pennsylvania, also sort of echoing a lot of what the GMC folks said, really emphasized transferring, ensuring that folks who transfer in from other public universities or community colleges, they don't have to start at level 1. They start as juniors, they can take their specialized classes, and they can graduate quicker. But the most interesting one to me, at least, is Rhode Island, where they established a formal pathway for folks who participate in apprenticeships or other work-based training programs to get credit for that. So again, they don't have to start at zero, pay more money, and spend more time on campus to get a degree. They can apply a specific amount of credits based on the program. Some will send over a lot more, some will send over a lot less. But that seems to be a really innovative program that I believe Maryland also had a bill that proposed it, but it didn't pass. So that seems really great. Tennessee, they have done a lot of work on making college more affordable, encouraging sort of path to completion like y'all have and like other states have. They also did kind of what Indiana did in 2013 and made it so that you can't get the full financial aid package unless you're on track for the 15 to finish. So students have to complete 30 credit hours within 12 months or they lose a portion of their financial aid. That's designed to keep students on track. I believe Complete College America has said that in some of their research that most students who take the 30 credit hours within 12 months are more likely to graduate in 4 years or less. So that's kind of their stick to go with the carrot of sort of the college financial aid and tuition that they give. And just sort of some closing thoughts, looking at some of the discussions on the West Coast where some of the universities like UCLA and the University of California, San Diego, Eastern Oregon University, Oregon State University, where they've talked about potentially switching back to a semester system. The momentum does seem to be switching from quarters to semesters and not necessarily vice versa. Looking at like states where, like California, where there's a split between one system has semesters and one has quarters, there does not appear to be a huge difference between graduation time or employment outcomes or sort of time to degree. But again, that's just, each state's very different, so that doesn't necessarily translate to other states. And then the biggest thing that everyone in those three systems mentioned was making sure you have transfer and articulation agreements, kind of like the GMC folks mentioned. If you don't ensure that folks can transfer out or in, and that the quarters are equivalent to a semester, it's, you're going to be on an island and your institution won't survive. And so yeah, that's it. I'll leave it to you. Like I said, this is an interesting topic, and y'all are definitely sort of leading the way with this study, so I'm excited to see what your results are.
Well, thank you, Cody. I appreciate you being here. Have any questions from the committee members? I noticed, Mr. Chairman, worth noting, it looked to me like what you found in Rhode Island is that they actually have a pathway that would get them a degree if they're essentially employed or interning.
Yeah, if any sort of work-based learning program, whether it's apprenticeship or paid internship, things like that, they can get up to, I believe, like 45 credit hours from that. And so it just sort of speeds up the path to degree. You're not making folks start back at the 4-year path if they're coming in with specialized experience, a certification, things like that.
And I'm assuming you went West Coast because that's where there's a higher concentration of quarter system,
Yeah, those were the only
universities.
Those were the only higher education systems that either had like entirely or almost entirely quarter systems.
I got you. Chairman Martin?
I'll divert from the question I was going to ask to follow up on Chairman Blackman's question. Relative to that, the up to 45 hours that you get work-based experience from, who accredits Rhode Island? What accrediting agency do they use? I know there are several around the country.
Yeah.
And did they have to run that through the accrediting agency for their degree accreditation?
So I'm not sure if they had to, but they're with the New England, I forget their specific name, but the New
Fair
England
enough.
States,
I mean, one of the ones is the Department of Education. So the question, are you familiar with, or maybe we can look to you to help us with that, to look at the SACS accreditation down here to see if there's any of that going on relative, because it does seem, I mean, I'll use a bit of a, I'm not sure I'm talking in specifics about this, but I've had it alluded to me that you get a service person out of the military that was a medic in the military that was working on battlefield injuries, and when we want to get them a medical degree, they have to go back and take basic human anatomy. I mean, there's some place in there where you ought to get credit for some life experience, even if you have to do it through testing, which leads me to the question I was going to originally ask. Somebody mentioned Western governors. I always get confused if it's governors Western or Western governors, but I think it's Western governors that uses a calendar, if you will, on competency-based education. What do you see, whether your semesters or quarters, relative to competency-based education? And again, I'm not suggesting that you just say, hey, we think somebody, built a bridge, therefore we're going to give them an engineering degree, but they use that, and if they can go through the engineering classes quickly and test, do you see any of that around the country? Did you see any of that around the country as you were looking, toward the quarter versus semester? Because it seems like if you had either one, a large dose of competency-based education to move through the system would help people get to degree faster.
Yeah. So in terms of sort of the military part of your question, I know a lot of states have passed laws to create sort of they call blue ribbon campuses, and so that's been more at like the singular institution level. They can create an office that'll work on sort of translating this military certification is equivalent to these classes or this class. I haven't seen anything on like a system-wide level, but I'll be happy to look into that and see if that's the case. In terms of the competency-based or work-based transfers, a lot of what we've seen has been states starting at the high school level, and really work is that kids graduate high school with a high school diploma as well as some type of licensure, certification, something geared towards whatever their career path is. So when they start college, they already have all that, and they can skip the physics 101 or biology 101. But I haven't seen anything like statewide in terms of legislation.
Okay, a brief follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so along that line, we've all heard the term, I think it came into vogue a couple of years ago, stackable credentials,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you get some of that if you're in the manufacturing world and you're working for the Kia plant down at West Point, and they run you through a class, then that's something you can do. So my question would be then, how do we, if we decide to do that, if in our university system, how do we make sure we bring the accrediting agency around? Because I'm sure my colleague to my immediate left down here could tell us about how hard it is to get new degrees approved within our system, and also to get them accredited. Remind me what down in Columbus, the Nexus, is it right? Nexus degrees. The Nexus degrees that we're trying to be a shorter, specialized degree. I think that took some time for that to get approved, but that makes really good sense to get people into the workforce. So I guess the whole question is, again, whether it's quarter or semesters, but being more adaptive or being able to adapt faster to a work environment, because it takes so long to get a degree approved, and you get somebody through it, and by the time you've done that, the outcome needed in order to work in that world has changed. It seems like that would be a place we would want to look and take our accrediting agencies along with us.
Yeah, so looking at some of the states like Rhode Island and Maryland, where they emphasize, like you mentioned, sort of the non-degree credentials, non-degree educational credits, I haven't seen anything in terms of how they convinced the accrediting board to approve it, but because it was written into state statute, it was approved by the governor. I assume they had sort of the weight of the state behind it and were able to get it through. But I can look into that, but I haven't read anything about how they specifically, convinced them to let them do these types of initiatives.
And the last thing, because the question is, so they convinced them that you can have that degree, you can be certified as an engineer in Rhode Island, but can you take that to Maryland? That's the question I have, because a lot of the professional licensure places, you have to have a degree in this to that, and does that certification carry forward? Do they recognize the 45 hours that Rhode Island's recognizing? They need to. I mean, it would make sense, but I'm just curious how the accrediting agencies work across the jurisdictional boundaries.
Yeah, I think that would come down to sort of the accreditation institutions signing some sort of articulation agreement. But in terms of the licensure aspect of it, as you know, we have a sort of center as part of CSG called the National Center for Interstate Compacts, who does a lot of work on ensuring that if you're licensed in one state, you're able to work in the other state if they approve or if they join that compact. And we have that for school psychologists, a lot for military professionals, teachers, speech therapists. So a lot of those license required jobs, really ensuring that you can transfer from state to state.
Thank you.
Representative Earhart?
Can we back up one slide? Whoever's controlling the slides over there, I just had a quick question about a couple of these. No, forward. You were on the right one.
Oh.
Yeah.
This one?
No.
Sorry.
There you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
And I'm just kind of circling back to really, quite frankly, the whole purpose of the existence of this committee is to analyze the semester and the quarter system. Your first point there, and I just want to make sure I understand where this is supported. Difficult to enter to transfer. Difficult to enter into transfer and articulation. And I'm just wondering. I was listening to your presentation. How we arrived at that conclusion there. Is that the Western schools that you were citing? Have they indicated that those that are on the quarter system are having, and can you unpack that a little bit for me?
Yeah, so that was the West Coast schools that are on the system. So like UC Berkeley, when they opted out, that was their stated reason. They said peer institutions operate on the semester. So, they were looking at, some of the, maybe more academically prestigious institutions were operating on the semester system, and so they wanted to be on the same calendar as them. That seems to be the same argument that the Oregon Council of Presidents made in their 2022 study. Was basically everyone's doing it. We want to be on the same calendar they are.
Right, and if you'll just forgive me for wanting to unpack that just a little bit more, and I'm just kind of wondering, if there were any specific. Other than just saying this generically, the calendars don't line up. And essentially the reason I'm asking is because we are sitting in an institution right now that has mastered the art of the seamless transition.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So you're not saying there that it's not possible. I'm just wondering, I just kind of, and maybe that's something you can get to me later, if we could kind of unpack why are they having difficulties, and say, for example, this institution is not.
Yeah, so like Louisiana Tech, for example, they have not had that issue because they kind of hybridized their quarter system to align with a semester system. So a student who takes classes over there 3 trimesters or 3 quarters, it's the equivalent to 2 semesters. They make sure it adds up so that folks can transfer out. I think, and this is just from reading some of the minutes and stuff from the board meetings, like in California, the issue was that the community colleges and the California State University system is on semesters, but then you have a parallel system that's on quarters, and that seemed to be where the difficulty came in sort of like writing policy for 2 different systems at the same time.
Okay, I understand. So, all right. Okay. So then, just to put a final qualifying point on that, in the absence of any other methods to facilitate that transition, it could be difficult.
Yes. Yeah. And I'd be
that
happy
might
to.
be helpful.
Yes. I will share the 2022 report with you from Oregon because, like I said, that was the main thing. But again, it was mostly just everyone's doing it and we're unique, and this is really hard.
So it doesn't have to be difficult.
No,
the final point there. No discernible difference between graduation time, and I'm actually honing in more on the second point, and employment outcomes. I see an asterisk there.
Yes, I put the asterisk.
I don't know what that asterisk goes to. There's some asterisks out there, but I didn't want to, because that's something that has come up a couple of times during our meetings, and I think most of the people on the committee will remember that we heard one of the downsides or one of the pros of semester system, and everybody being aligned on that, is it is essentially, for lack of a better term, depositing graduates into the job field at a time that they're searching, and it aligns with employers that are looking to hire at that time. And I wondered about that a little bit. I haven't questioned it in committee before, but my thought on that was, I know there's a significant number of students, they are starting their interview process well before graduation. Many of them are graduating with jobs already in place. I know that's particularly true, like, for example, with TCSG, with such a high job placement rate. That I wondered about that. Are we really not? Are those on the quarter system really not being competitive? But I'm wondering how you arrive at that, because you're saying there is no discernible difference, and specifically on the point of employment outcomes.
Yeah, and I did put the asterisk because, as you noticed, Louisiana Tech is way outperforming every other member of the University System of Louisiana State University System. They are far and away the better. But this is specifically looking at sort of Washington and California, where they have sort of peer institutions that operate on different systems, their rates are relatively similar. But again, that's just in their state. In Georgia, obviously GMC is doing fantastic, and so everyone wishes they could have that sort of transfer rate.
But in those particular states, just to clarify, make sure I'm understanding correctly, you're not seeing a discernible difference between the employment opportunities for students coming out on the quarter system versus the semester system.
No,
That's what we're okay.
Not in those states, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Chairman Chokas?
Yeah. And Cody, I'm somewhat intrigued by the West Coast universities not being more, are they more autonomous within their state?
Yeah, so there is, for Washington, Oregon in particular, there is no sort of USG. It's just the University of Washington governs itself and all of its sort of subsidiary campuses. Washington State governs itself and all its subsidiary campuses. They're a lot more autonomous. They have a lot more local control. Like I said, some of those changes happened in the 80s, at least with like Washington State. I couldn't really find any information from back then about why they wanted to be autonomous, but they wanted more local control, I'm assuming, based on some of the feedback from some of the recent discussions about changing. But yeah, they're very unique. Looking at other states in our region, I could not really find any that didn't have some sort of unified statewide governance. They do have, I should clarify, they do have like what they call higher education like coordination boards, which is just to make sure like, math 1030 is relatively similar across institutions, but they don't have like specific governance over finances, over unless some statute does say that like, Washington State University can offer these degrees, University of Washington can offer these sort of doctoral degrees. But besides that, it's all left to the institution.
May I have one
Very
follow-up?
decentralized, very unique.
One follow-up, do they require state funding or do they raise their funds locally?
No, they get state funding.
Okay, thank you.
You had another one, Chairman Martin?
Follow up on Representative Earhart's. I mean, again, credit to GMC on, the transition being very good. But I think I heard loud and clear that you spend a lot of time making sure that you know what the university system's doing and you know what the technical college system's doing. That's a bit different than if you had students at GMC that were trying to go to heaven forbid, Auburn or Alabama. No, I'm just kidding with our friends, our friends to the west. But if you matched it with other schools, you may not match. Because here's the question. I mean, once upon a time, in a place far, far away, when I was at the University of Georgia, I wanted to take an extra class in the summer and not drive from Alpharetta to Athens, and there was no online classes then. So I took it at a junior college, and I think it was Perimeter College then. And it was one of the 3 English classes, right? So you had a third, a third, a third. So the question is, if that junior college now was on quarters, and they were teaching that on quarters, and I took the first semester at the University of Georgia, I was going to take a second semester. What would you take if you went to take a quarter's worth of freshman English at somebody that was on a quarter? I mean, how would that work? And isn't that the problem of kind of grabbing a course from someplace and then going back, while you're still enrolled? It's not hard to transfer. Yeah. They can transfer your transcript either way. I think you guys do an awesome job of that. But if you're just trying to go grab a couple of courses in the summer, that's probably more difficult. Did you find, is that where we're at?
Yeah, I didn't see anything like that. Like the folks at GMC shared, there is a lot of formulas for how they can transfer it, but it's mostly based on sort of quarter to semester, semester to quarter, not necessarily one class like you said.
Well, yeah, I'm not worried about what the credit you get. I'm worried about what the curriculum is. I mean, if history is divided into 2 places, if you got to take it, or calculus is divided into 2 places by semester, if I want to go to somebody that's on the quarter system, what am I getting in the middle of that quarter? Because you're getting half of what you already took in some part of the, I don't see how that would happen.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in most cases it would be the same course, but they're doing a more intense. So that's why they're finishing early. It's not like they're splitting the class. It's more like they're finishing it in the 9 weeks here instead of spreading it over the 15 weeks in a semester.
But if you were doing it in three places, like back in the days, if there were, and maybe it was just two classes, maybe I'm remembering, it's been a long time. Maybe calculus at Georgia, even though there were a quarter system, was two classes, calculus, 201 and 202, and not 201, 202, and 203. So is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think the problem you're mentioning, it could exist, and in some cases does exist. I'm just saying that it's not a function of the semester quarter necessarily. It's just that there could be misalignment like you're saying.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, the Louisiana Tech folks, when I was talking to them, so they have, the 11-week sort of trimester system, and she just said that means that they jump into the studies right away. So like, their Calc 101, there's not like a syllabus week where you're going over the requirements. It's, all right, lesson one, we're going.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. Get one more over here, Representative.
Might have been answered. I just wanted to kind of, and actually it was more of a question, I'm sorry, for General Caldwell, just in terms of the transferability and the movement of graduates out. My understanding is you have graduates going to institutions outside of Georgia. I think I heard you have a disproportionate number of that go to Syracuse.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you run
They
into
actually fly here and recruit our students, and they offer them tremendous scholarships. Most of our students want to remain. They're That's all right. Most of our students want to remain in Georgia because they have the ability to use HOPE. Most don't qualify for SAIL, but they can get HOPE. And so, but we do actually have Syracuse University. There's 5 or 6. Vermont comes down, does a lot of recruiting, and they offer great scholarships for our students to go to their institutions with 100. And we haven't worked any agreements. It's just they accept every bit of the credit hours, and they go right in seamlessly.
And Cody, I know you're just a messenger. We tried to make you an expert on this in just a few weeks, right?
Yeah. I said that the closing thoughts are totally just related to those sort of institutions and systems that I looked at and sort of spoke with the folks who are there. I think like the GMC folks mentioned, making the effort to have these agreements is really kind of what the common thread was among all those institutions.
A couple of questions, and you may or may not know the answer, but if you saw this in your research, maybe, so would you in any way what you saw lend itself that you have maybe more of a traditional student preferred this semester and a non-traditional student may work better within a faster turnaround or something possibly?
Looking at sort of like the enrollment levels for transfer versus first year versus non-traditional students, I didn't necessarily see that.
Didn't see anything?
No, and this is just anecdotal, but the provost at Louisiana Tech said that they see that most of their students enter knowing what they want to do, and so they're able just to continue on their path and get going.
And Louisiana Tech, if I'm looking at that right, they basically just have a quarter semester that they call semesters. A quarter system that they call.
Yeah, it's a quarter system, but really it's more trimester. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I got you. And
yeah,
then,
there's 3 quarters somehow, so maybe their math needs a little work, but.
And hybrid. And then the point that I believe Representative Secretary Treasurer Earhart was also getting to, maybe Mr. Peavy knows this, maybe he can get it to us, but do you recall the number of articulation courses prior to the conversion at TCSG and then after, just the core number? I know we have a bunch of individual.
Hard list before the transition.
We had one because I was there.
Okay,
I remember.
I'll
it.
have to find that, Mr. Chairman. I don't know what that number was. I know that once we moved to the transition, it became easier.
Yeah.
And we added 2. If there was a previous list, we bumped it up to a certain amount, but I'll come back with that answer for you.
Okay, awesome. That would be great. And I guess the only other thing I wanted to ask, if I was hearing this correctly, you mentioned Pennsylvania. Do they basically say you have to let the students articulate? I mean, basically you have to accept them at a certain pace. Is that what they do?
Yes, and that's for if you're going from an institution in the state to another institution in the state, so like a community college to a 4-year. And they did have an exception, but it was only if there's a limit on the enrollment. So if the college, caps sort of biology program at 60 students or 160 students, they can use that as a reason to not accept you as a junior, make you sort of wait. But other than that, no, if you are transferring in from a community college or another four-year institution, they have to mark you as a junior and let you sort of transfer from a biology to biology, math to math, whatever it is.
Okay. Well, if nobody
Yeah.
has anything further, thank you for being here, Cody. That was great. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Sorry it didn't work out before, but so glad you're able to make it.
Yeah,
in
no,
person.
thank you for being flexible. Glad to be here. And sorry I didn't have copies of my slides, but I'll share all that information with you afterwards. Thanks.
I hope that wasn't all for naught, that we didn't send you all that information and studying that you did. And I'm sorry, Matt, we're going to call on you next. I got Matt Cardozo with the Department of Education, and he's the Director of External Affairs. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is
right.
correct.
Well,
That is
thank
correct.
you. Last but not least,
No,
for
that's
sure.
right. And I can be very quick. It is good morning, and I hope to finish where it's still good morning. So I can get out by noon here. But real quick, I'm Matt Cardoza, Director of External Affairs at Georgia Department of Education. Have a colleague of mine, Jennifer Finney, who is our dual enrollment expert, can get into weeds if we have any particular questions there. As they alluded to earlier, Milledgeville is kind of home for me too. My grandfather was a professor of military science here, and I think the head of military long time ago. Father went here for a little while. Uncle, I went to Georgia College twice, split perfectly on quarter systems to semester from undergrad to graduate school. So this is all, it's a great discussion and great place. So thanks for having us. But just a couple of slides, and these slides are just to really dive in about how it impacts K-12, which is primarily dual enrollment. Not anything really meant to lean one way or the other. These are just simply, here's what a potential impact could be with that switch. So some of it is, of course, right now in scheduling. K-12, high schools are on a semester calendar, so the flexibility right now works in tandem with most of our university system. Technical colleges on a semester system. They go back and forth. There are typically a couple of weeks that might be different based on when the college might start the year in their particular semester. So those work well together. The pacing and the workload, obviously quarters would move quicker in that more compressed time period than the high school course would for articulation purposes. So there's some of the articulation, and I'll get into that in a minute, about how we would need to look at that to ensure that the same amount of credits given. The course completion could be impacted. So if we have a course that is, let's say physics, would that, one semester course that it is now need to be divided into two parts, or would you compress that content into a shorter period of time? I know y'all work with high schools already on that to ensure that those transfers, the amount of course credit, work seamlessly for them. We would just have to do that statewide. And then finally, the availability of courses, and this is really more on the high school side. So right now we have a lot of our students who may take economics as an example. If that's compressed, if say it didn't meet the course requirement for high school credit, we may have many more students who then are taking it back at the high school. The question becomes workforce. How many econ teachers do we have in the high schools that are there available? A lot of our career technical and ag courses are also on that similar time period. Welding is an example where we would have to have that workforce. So the availability of courses could be impacted. Again, not something you can't overcome, just potential impacts. The financial impact, this is all a very much a could be. Again, in some cases they are moving quicker, so they could potentially require more hours. And we know they cap at 45 already for dual enrollment for quarter systems, and 30 hours for the semester. So would there be a potential increase in the state's obligation? You can get 10 classes in the semester right now. That would be 9 classes for the quarter system. So kids are getting, I guess, credit for one more course right now with the cap as it is. And then finally, the students' dual enrollment hours, as I said, could cap out quicker, again, depending on how that works out in their scheduling and what the particular institution is. I think probably the biggest one for high schools, and y'all mentioned this a little bit, is almost the administrative side of it for counselors. There's just more often, one more time a year, that they would be advising students. We have the same number of counselors, we have the same amount of time that they're going to be working throughout a school year, so there are not more of them because of any particular change. So there could be less time available for them to do all the myriad of other responsibilities that they have if they are trying to advise students on dual enrollment, say 3 times a year versus maybe twice. And the biggest would be existing articulations that we have with all of the institutions. We have an entire dual enrollment catalog that we work with, and the individual institutions would work with high schools to make sure that catalog worked. But we would need to, of course, make that statewide changes to ensure that if everybody was on the same time frame. So the administrative part for high schools is probably the biggest issue, along with that flexibility. Again, the financial may or may not be an impact at all. So that's it for my actual slides, but happy to take questions. Like I said, Jennifer Finney, our dual enrollment experts here, if we've got any detailed questions that we can answer.
Matt, real quick, this may help everybody, but I'm going to show my age. I think I was on semester system when I went to high school, quarter system when I went to college at UGA.
Yep.
Do you know when y'all moved?
Yes, so, well, for me, I went to Georgia College. I did my undergrad. I graduated in 1998. I started graduate school fall of 98, and we moved in that summer.
The K through 12?
Oh, 2 semesters, sorry.
Yeah, when y'all went to...
That,
I started teaching in 1991 at Dalton High School, and we were semester 10. When I graduated in 86, we were
Somewhere
in between 86 and 91.
We got it narrowed down even further because I graduated in 91 and, from high school. So that's when, I mean, sometime before I was in school, yeah. So mid-late 80s, I guess.
And I think USG went to semester in 96, is that right?
98. And then since we're on it, TCSG was in 2008, 7, something like that? Okay. Any questions for Mr. Cardozo? You have one? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. So you were too young to remember the actual transition. You didn't walk through the transition.
Not in high school.
You did not walk through the transition.
Just in college.
Yeah. Sometimes with these facts, it's kind of fun for me, and it might be irritating for some to sort of reverse the fact and ask if the alternate is also true. So I guess my question would be, if one of the concerns is with school counselors advising more often with the same amount of time and having less time available, when K-12 transitioned from quarters to semesters, would the alternate be true? Did you reduce the number of school counselors as a result? Does that make sense? Did that transition result? Because you've got the same number, you may have the same number of counselors now under the semester system that you had under the quarter system.
Right. I would say that's probably more on of a funding issue, because QBE builds in 400 or 450 students equals a counselor, and that hasn't changed. So
okay.
So that would have, at least earnings.
Well, obviously, yeah, with student population going up, you would have, but
right.
I mean, one for one, proportionately, would it be the same? That didn't change.
Variable in that is you didn't really have dual enrollment at the scale that we currently have. We've gone already in 2015 open to kind of floodgates of that. So in 1991, all you had was post-secondary option joint enrollment, which was a very small. So it probably took a fair amount of advisement, but you had the scale was just much smaller than what we had over 53,000 students
Thank you.
Yes.
Google thinks Georgia K-12s aren't on the semester system.
Well, that would be news to us.
I was just going to ask. I was seriously
Maybe it's
gonna ask when it
geolocating,
transferred.
right? And it's picking up where we're at here.
Unless it's talking about the one over in, east of Europe over there, that Georgia, it should have us here.
Well, y'all, is that right? I mean, your prep school is quarter. You're all quarter, right? No, you're semester and then quarter. Okay, all right.
Prep school semester, but to the question about advisement, one thing that we do with junior college, our high school principal is one for our fall high school, and she actually does all of the scheduling in the summer. So because we're able to work with them like that seamless transition, and their coaches work with counselors, they know what classes are needed for their open enrollment students, and our counselor actually does all of the scheduling during the summer, the bulk of it. Of course, there's going to be tweaks, so that opens her up to do more of the career advising and the day-to-day counseling, and she's not locked down to the scheduling. So.
Gotcha. I don't see any more questions. You obviously did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you
If there
for
are any
being
other
here.
follow-up questions from the committee? Yes. This one concludes. Let us know.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for being with us. I know there may be some discussions that we may have at the committee level, or there may be some questions that are going back and forth. Molly, I know we had thrown a couple of questions out there maybe that we might want to try to get, some responses on, but I think USG and TCSG are helping us with that. So does anybody have anything further today for the good of the order? I think this will be our last open public, presentation type meeting, if there are any comments or questions. If there are none, I would, again say thank you. I know y'all are hosting some of us for our lunch afterwards. Is that correct? Well, thank you so much for hosting the meeting. I can't think of a better place to meet. This is a perfect room, right? The history and everything else that's associated with it. But we want to thank all of our institutions across TCSG, USG, GMC, DOE, everybody that has taken the time to participate in these meetings. Grateful for the time and the effort that you put in, and I think we've learned a lot here, and we'll have some discussions and see what we can produce as far as findings or any recommendations. But nobody has anything else for the good of the order. I want to thank the committee members especially for their time and for participating in all these meetings, and I look forward to lunch afterwards and speaking with all of you after this as well. We stand adjourned. Thank you.